Hi, everybody. My name is Marla Neufeld, and welcome to the Surrogacy Space podcast. Today, I have the very intelligent and equally funny surrogacy attorney, Jeff Kasky. Welcome to the show, Jeff.
Thank you. I hope I can live up to that. Thank you.
Absolutely. So, Jeff and I have had years of experience of working together, and we make a great team as attorneys. We handle hundreds of surrogacy matters together. And notably, we co authored a book that was published by the American Bar Association on a guide to assisted reproduction, kind of an A to Z on surrogacy. And Jeff and I go way back. And I'm just so happy that you were able to join the show today, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you. And I just, for transparency purposes, want your listeners to know that you did the vast majority of the writing of that book. And there's a second edition coming, right?
Yeah.
Who knows when? But it'll be an update, and everybody should be very happy and more intelligent after they read it.
Well, thank you. And Jeff, you added the humor that I then subsequently had to edit out of the book. So you kept me on my toes.
Perfect.
Yeah. So, Jeff, tell me a little bit about your experience as an attorney and how you got into surrogacy law. What brings you to this world, art world?
Sure. Well, as you know, I ran a nonprofit adoption agency for about 20 years, starting in the mid 90s. My father and I were the directors of the agency. We did something along the lines of 1,500, upwards of 1,500 adoptions
Wow.
during the course of the life of that agency. And I really got the understanding of the infertility world, of the need for the types of services that we were providing, and I really enjoyed working with the people. It's very, very different from most areas of law in that it's very intensive, insofar as working with actual live human people, as opposed to what so many lawyers do every day. Not to say that doesn't exist in the law, but not certainly not at this level.
Yeah,
So
it's much more human and it's not a real estate transaction where it's all business to business. We're definitely dealing with a lot of emotion.
exactly, and it's also people's lives, and I felt like I wanted to live up to the responsibility every day of having that enormous weight and that enormous pressure and responsibility of helping people create their families, many of whom, in many cases, would not have otherwise been able to have, a family, and they
Right.
wanted to. Not everybody has to have a family, there's no law that says you have to have kids, and but the people who've chosen to undertake the very, very difficult steps in adoption and surrogacy, clearly, are very goal oriented, and it's really an honor to be able to help them.
Yeah, that's awesome. I feel the same way. And I actually want to take a back step and I'd be remiss in not mentioning that Jeff actually also wrote a book on adoption. So he is the author on both of these areas of law and knows a lot about adoption and surrogacy, which I know helps when he works with his clients. And, actually, I wanted to ask you, what is like the main difference between if a parent comes to you wanting to know their options, how would you explain the main differences between surrogacy and adoption?
Because they're both alternative reproductive technologies or techniques or whatever anybody wants to call it, and because they're both infertility related, they're often conflated, and sometimes people think that they're very similar just because they live in the same ecosystem. But
Mm,
in many, many ways, they couldn't be further from each other. And I would say the main difference, God, it just depends on the way a particular individual or couple wants to allocate their risk. Um,
mm,
if they're okay with spending more money to get less risk at the end,
mm,
and the risk I'm specifically referring to is an adoption of a birth mother deciding that she does not want to do the adoption. She wants to
right.
keep the baby. That's the biggest risk in adoption. I mean, there are others, but
Did you see that in your practice, your adoption practice, where the birth mothers did change their minds?
I'll never forget the first time it happened. It was years into our agency before it happened, and I remember her name and I can see her face, and I know it was a scam. It was a scam from day one. That she was just trying, and under Florida law, a woman who's placing a baby for adoption, although they can't get paid, they can get help with their living expenses if a court
Right.
orders it. So,
Right.
unfortunately, it's just very, very easy to scam money if you're soulless. And that once it happened one time, it just would happen periodically. I'd say,
Mhm.
um, odds wise, we were doing pretty well as far as not having situations where the birth mother would change her mind at the very last minute.
Yeah.
But with that said, if it happened to the Smith family, they don't care that it didn't happen to the Jones family.
Right.
Um, you know, surrogacy, is more expensive than adoption, generally speaking, because of the medical element of it and the medications, the prescriptions, and the surrogates' living expenses, et cetera. It can
Right.
get up there, as you well know, Marla.
Mm.
But the risks really aren't as extreme and severe. And with surrogacy, there's just a really good chance that you're going to end up having a baby at the end of it. It may take a little bit longer, it may cost a little bit more, but I'll tell you, with adoption, adoptive families every single day and every single night would think, about the birth mother. I mean,
Right.
this is somebody, she's due in 6 months. For the next 6 months of our lives, we have to wonder if we're getting ripped off or if she's just going to honestly change her mind. It wasn't a rip off, but she just decided
Right.
at the end she couldn't do it. With surrogacy, you don't get that. You don't have that.
Right. Right. And the law obviously is in favor of the intended parent. I mean, and the surrogate that in Florida, at least, she can't change her mind unless it's her genetic child. So it's obviously a totally different rules that we're playing by.
Well, not only that, but the fact is that with adoption, you're dealing with women who come to you pregnant already, for the most part, generally speaking. I mean, every now and then there was the outlier situation where the baby was already born. But generally speaking, they're pregnant. It's an unexpected pregnancy. And I'm putting this in quotes, an unwanted pregnancy, although I know a lot of people will say that there's no such thing. But you're dealing with somebody who lives a different way from the way the surrogates live.
Mm.
Generally speaking, the birth mothers are uh, from a different background and behave in different ways than the surrogate. So there's that element of it too. The surrogates are going into this with their eyes wide open, having had consultation with a lawyer, having reviewed a contract very carefully, having spousal support, etc.
Right.
Whereas in adoption, it's really just not like that.
Yeah, and that actually leads to my next question for you is why is it important? And this is the role that you and I work together in all the time is one of us will represent a set of parents and one of us will represent the surrogate in the review of the contract. Why is it so important for the surrogate to have her own attorney when going over her agreement?
Yeah, I mean, not just the surrogate, but the surrogate couple or partnership,
Right.
unless the surrogate's a single. But absolutely. Well, let's start with the fact that the lawyers who write the gestational surrogacy agreements tend to be very verbose, and the agreements are very long. I'm kind of tongue in cheek because I'm talking to you about you.
Yeah.
Uh, but
And you and I have pared down my agreement over time.
we have. But still, you're talking about an
Yeah.
agreement that
It's a lot.
scores of pages long. I mean, 50, 60 pages long. And
Right.
while you have done a masterful job of making it readable, and of speaking in a language that people can understand, still, it's just so overwhelming. And
Yeah, and for many people, this could be their first time ever reading a legal agreement, let alone, like you said, a 50-page document.
right, exactly. So the reason that it's important to have a legal consultation with the surrogate couple or surrogate is
Mhm.
is to go through that contract, to break it down to its elements, to explain the most important parts, to answer any questions, because a lot of times people are afraid to ask questions. And then when they
Right,
find out that I'm their lawyer, I'm your lawyer, I represent you. I have
right.
a duty of confidentiality, the ethical duties, everything as if you were paying me, which you're not. Um,
Mhm.
then they feel very comfortable about getting the things that they need to talk about off their chest and asking the questions that they were afraid to ask. So important.
Absolutely. I agree. And actually, in fact, in Florida, it's not a legal requirement for the surrogate to have her own attorney, but it's absolutely a best practice that I always will follow. And I think it's just a really critical step for everyone to feel like they've been properly represented and, been able, like you said, to express any concerns or ask any questions to their own advocate.
I wholeheartedly agree, and not just because I'm the one doing that work, but I think most people would agree. I mean, why wouldn't you? It's got to be done.
Yeah, I mean, the surrogate might read it over and go, "It looks fine," but then we know what to look for. We know what to point out and make sure nothing gets, missed or, just to emphasize the importance of things. Which, I was curious, what are some of the main provisions that you do discuss in the surrogacy agreement with your clients when you represent the surrogate or the surrogate couple?
Well, the things I highlight are the important. Well, of course, I highlight every. I mean, I go through every
Right. Of
step.
course, it's yeah, and I know you do spend hours on your reviews, so
I
that's a
do.
very unique thing to you. And you also work many times on the weekend. Noble of you.
Weekends, weekdays. If the day ends in a Y, it's a day, and that's so a day that I can work because I
Right.
enjoy the work. I love the surrogates. But before I talk about that, let me answer your question. The things that I highlight that are most important in the proposed GSA, gestational surrogacy agreement, are things like the baby has to be born in Florida. There are certain provisions that will impair or curtail your ability to travel certain distances from the hospital or out of state or out of the country. Um, Obviously, the substance abuse or substance use of anything. What's
Right.
funny is that the surrogates, generally speaking, they kind of chuckle when I talk about alcohol or drug use or that sort of thing because they're
Or even
so
hair dye.
yeah, right. Well, getting hair dyed, that's a different story because, we work with people of all different ethnic backgrounds and in certain communities, hair is something I've learned this over the course of time that is non-negotiable that
Hmm.
that certain things have to be done. But they'll chuckle at doing at things like drug and alcohol use because they're so not that person. They
Oh yeah.
probably would not have passed the psychological and gotten to the point where they get to talk to me if they were the ones who went out and, smoked a carton of cigarettes every weekend.
Right.
But on the other hand, the thing that people don't consider and that you very wisely have in your agreement, Marla, is things like over-the-counter supplements, things that you can just buy at the drugstore, at GNC, at Walgreens, whatever, that have substances such as guarana, which is a natural caffeine. People don't even realize that
Right.
some of those things are contraindicated to pregnancy. So it's important to review all of that stuff. The expectations of the intended parents, of how they're going to live their life, that they're going to make every doctor appointment. Doctor appointments aren't optional. I mean, there's so much. There's so
Right.
much.
Right. Right. Of course. And obviously, a big topic now is the abortion and selective reduction to make sure, obviously that provision doesn't get breezed over when reading it through because we always have to make sure everybody's on the same page with the expectations on whether she'll terminate if the parents ask her to.
We do, and also for them to know that if a doctor says to the surrogate, "Look, there's a problem with your pregnancy, and it may affect your health or even your life, and we feel like we should terminate the pregnancy because of what's happening here," that they may not be able to. They may not
Right.
legally be able to terminate the pregnancy. Now,
Sure.
with that said, it's absolutely crucial to note that with the increased using of PGD testing, it's so rare now to see the need for a termination or a selective reduction. I mean, how many hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of
Right.
these have I done? I did my first one in 1995. I've done
Hmm.
so many hundreds of surrogacies that, and I could tell you that I think maybe twice. Do I
Yeah.
remember? Maybe three times? Did somebody have to terminate the pregnancy? It's so important to talk about, but it almost never happens.
True. True. And now it's very important for during that review to talk about not only the ability to have the abortion or willingness to, but the ability and the willingness to travel outside of Florida if necessary and possible due to the ever changing abortion laws in Florida and throughout the United States.
Right, and the possibility that traveling to terminate a pregnancy may be against the law, even though that may be unconstitutional.
Right.
It's
True.
in such flux, and
Yeah.
it's really kind of a shame what the legislatures around the country are doing with this. But we can only do what we can do, and my job is to highlight these issues to the surrogate, let her know what she's stepping into, making sure she's walking in the door with eyes wide open, and then hoping for the best.
Yeah, absolutely. And tell me, is this important for all types of matches? Because I know we handle, agency matches, self matches. Do you see any difference in representation between those two types of matters?
Not at all. I think the surrogate's coming in. She's bringing me a 50-plus page contract. It doesn't matter what type of match it is. She should have somebody reviewing that, somebody knowledgeable and professional, and not just her cousin whose neighbor is
Mhm.
a family lawyer who
You're right.
has heard of surrogacy once. I mean, this is really specialized stuff.
Yeah, that really does no service to anyone when the person, the attorney involved doesn't have experience because they just don't know what to look for. And so it really hurts the whole process when that happens.
And the time element of it too, because many lawyers who work in a transactional practice don't understand that this isn't something that can sit on a desk for a couple of months.
Right. How often do we have to talk about when someone gets their period and how we have to get started by that period? And so,
Right, exactly.
we don't, our deadlines are really menstrual cycle related. And speaking of women, I guess, tell me about when a surrogate is married or has a partner. You were mentioning how you represent both members of the couple. Uh, how does that work? Is that a legal requirement, a best practice, as far as involving a partner or spouse?
It's definitely best practice, and the as long as their interests are not divergent, as long
Mhm.
as they are on the same page with this, then I'm comfortable representing them both. I think it would be overkill to have a lawyer for each of them, as long as their interests are convergent.
Right.
But
Agreed.
yeah, but it's important because the partner, and by the way, that could be a husband, wife, it could be a boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. But
Right.
the partner's part of this. They're integral in getting. This is a 10-plus month process,
Right.
um, and if they're there for this, they've got to know that at a certain point, it says in the contract that the surrogate can't lift something over a certain amount of weight. Somebody's got to do the litter box.
We
Somebody,
even get
you know,
involved in their sex life, talking about abstaining or using protection. So it gets pretty intimate in the contract.
that's the worst part of the review for me.
Yeah.
I feel so creepy when I have to talk about that. And I talk about it. I find a way to get through it.
Right.
I make it kind of chuckle worthy, and my discomfort with the subject matter is part of the entertainment of it.
Yeah.
But I get through it, and
It's like,
knock
honey,
on
I have a
wood.
contract. Sorry, not tonight. I mean, I can't break.
I think so. I don't really get even that granular with it, to be honest with
Yeah.
you. I just I talk about it. I make sure that the surrogate knows exactly what she's promising to do and not to do, but I don't get too detailed with it because it would be super creepy.
Yeah. And sometimes the spouse or partner gets certain payments under the agreements. It's important for them to understand if they need lost wages or travel per diem and things like that. So it is important, I think, that they join and be aware of what's going on in the agreement.
Right. They should know what's coming to them, and also what they're not entitled to,
Right.
because there's parameters around all of this.
Absolutely.
Unlike adoption, which is just writing a blank check sometimes. An agreed upon arrangement, and while there are some contingencies, and you can't sit and look at it and say, okay, well, this is what it's going to be at the end of the day. At least you've got your arms around it to a certain extent.
I know you mentioned with adoption, there can be a court order permitting expenses to to the birth mother, but for our listeners, is there a contract between the parents and the birth mother in an adoption matter, like a
There's
traditional
not.
adoption? Yeah.
There's not. It's a totally different ballgame. I mean,
Hmm.
I could and have spent many hours talking about this.
And you have some just amazing stories between you and your dad. I mean, you did write the book, but really, it's amazing.
There's an expression that I can't stand that people misuse. They say you can't make this up. You can
Hmm.
make anything up. Maybe you've seen Star Wars. You can literally make anything up. But with these stories that my father and I have collected over the years on adoption, you don't have to make them up. That
That's how I
nothing.
feel when I speak to you both. It's
Yeah,
true.
and it's all true, and. So
Well, it's amazing how many people you've helped in all these different capacities. And if you wouldn't mind sharing with the listeners, just I know you do surrogacy and some limited adoptions, but what other types of legal services do you assist with? Because I know you're a man that wears many hats and
I
super interesting experiences.
I do. Well, first of all, I'm not really, although I have to say, periodically, something adoption related will come by every now and then. I am absolutely trying to stay away from adoption. I want to say I paid my dues, and maybe even a little bit of PTSD. Um,
Right.
but what I do in addition to the surrogacy is I'm a Florida Supreme Court certified mediator. I also do a lot of mediation training for in the insurance field for people who need credits for their insurance license, whether they're adjusters or whatever. I do a lot of training for those people, and I'm also a tour manager. I do legal work and actual on the road work for some bands. So it's yeah, it's it's all over the place.
Right.
Every single thing I do is my main job and also a side gig.
Yeah. I
So
mean, you're always reachable. There's no one more reachable that I know than you. You will always answer the phone and you pretty much will always say yes. You just, you're there for everyone. And, I really, really enjoy working with you.
thank you. Likewise, you're the best. I mean, um, if there was a team that could collaborate better than you and I have over the years,
Yeah.
yeah, maybe it's I don't know, Batman and Robin or something. It even may have more differences than we do. I just think it's such a pleasure working with you.
Yeah, you too. And I'm looking forward to the new iteration of our book coming out in the near future. And if you could share with our listeners or the listeners, what is the best way for people to reach you where you will answer 24/7?
Um, Go into the bathroom and look in the bathroom mirror and close your eyes and say, Jeff 3 times, and then I'll be standing behind you.
Perfect.
That's that's the best way. No, I don't know. How about this? They know how to get a hold of you. If they need me, you can help them find me. I don't know. I don't. I just
Alrighty. Well, no problem. I'm happy to share any Jeff's information with whoever is looking for any of the different legal areas that he can help with. And Jeff, any parting words you'd like to share?
yes. The surrogates are heroes. The surrogates
Absolutely.
the surrogates are the heroes of this process. They don't have to do this. This is tantamount to a live organ donation. Somebody who is going through something that they don't have to do in order to make someone else happy. The fact that there is some compensation involved does not take away not one iota from the amazingness of what surrogates are doing. And I revere the surrogates. I love doing these reviews because I love getting to talk to the surrogates. It's really an honor.
Yeah, I mean, well said. And I know that you have that passion and it really shows in your work. And thank you so much for joining us today. And obviously, I look forward to working on many more cases together. And thank you, everyone, for listening to the surrogacy space. Come back soon.
Thank you, Marla.
Thank you.